Okay, Erev Tov. Actually, 2 weeks ago, we ended with a discussion. We had a little bit of a discussion about abortion, showing the extremes of life or choice that are both too extreme and too one-sided and not accurate. And we went into a discussion about IVF in how do you say, artificially inseminated and frozen, that kind of thing. Is it, I don't know how we got to it, but I have it written down to look into the question of what, and I looked into halachically the question, and it is not forbidden. It's not totally forbidden. It's certainly not compared in any way to abortion to then destroy such a frozen fertilized, inseminated, or whatever the right term is. You're allowed to destroy it. There are opinions halachically that it's not abortion, but you're still not supposed to do it, or maybe it's compared to kind of wasting the kind of idea of hotzaat zera levatala, wasting, kind of a person using his sperm, sending it out without any purpose, without any use, and that kind of thing, but certainly not any prohibition of anything compared to abortion. So that one is solved. Michael, did you want to say something about that medically?
Well, the question that I had offered to look into was a little different. We were talking about the day after pill,
right?
And whether that would constitute an abortifactant. And I read about that, and they say that they don't consider it causing an abortion. What the medication actually does is it prevents an egg from being released.
Right.
It kind of
I thought it prevented
puts a wall around the ovary for a short period of time, long enough for whatever sperm was there to die off and not impregnate the egg.
Okay.
Doesn't work 100% of the time, but it can work. And so my question is, how would the rabbis look at that?
Yeah, well, if it prevents the meeting of the sperm and the egg, then it's not killing anything. It's preventing a creation of life, but it's not killing anything. So that certainly would not be considered abortion. Okay, those were some fringes left from 2 weeks ago. And
so let me comment one other thing here, because I think you've opened Pandora's box. One of the issues with artificial creation of an embryo is, what do you do with the embryo? If it then gets implanted into the womb of the woman who donated the egg, then I don't think we have any problem. But what we're seeing now is more and more use of surrogate parenting, where it's implanted in somebody else's uterus, and sometimes that person doesn't want to give up the baby. Sometimes the baby's born and the parents that donated the embryo see a problem with it and don't want it. Back to your court.
Those are different questions, though. Of course, there are halachic questions. Who is the mother? Is the mother a woman who from whom the egg came, or the woman who, if it's, for instance, a woman who can't carry a pregnancy and then as a surrogate mother to carry the pregnancy? There are halachic questions about that. For instance, questions about conversion. If a non-Jewish woman donates the egg, or a Jewish woman donates the egg, but the woman is of a non-Jewish woman, and so on, then there are questions and disagreements. Of course, science runs ahead before both philosophy and morality and halakha have to keep on chasing after it and then discussing what is the meaning of these scientific, things that are renewed in the world. Generally, there is a disagreement between halachic poskim about the question of who is the mother. The more generally accepted opinion is that the woman who carries the pregnancy and then is considered the mother. Meaning, if a Jewish couple, and I'm saying this because I experienced this with a certain couple, a Jewish couple goes to get an egg donation, and has the woman has this impregnated egg put into this Jewish from a non-Jewish woman, put into the womb of a Jewish woman, who then gives birth to the child, then most poskim would say the child is considered Jewish and does not need conversion. There are those who say that the child needs conversion. And just to be on the Machmir side, I'm speaking about a specific case, of course, without mentioning anything about who it was. We had the child then also converted, just to be, just so that it shouldn't happen in this child's future, that this child wants to get married and then someone raises the question, well, who's really your mother? So on all fronts, he's covered, he's Jewish. But those are questions that, and then there are questions, like you say, this couple and that couple start fighting over it, and then there are mistakes that are made in, by, for instance, in Machon Pu'ah in Israel, that oversees a lot of these kinds of, Israel is, of course, a champion in these kind of treatments. And Machon Pu'ah has women who oversee and follow through the whole process to make sure that they don't make the mistake that they apparently made in this case that's in court in Israel, because it's not clear who exactly the parents were, and the biological parents, and so on. So these things happen, but they happen because of mistakes, and they happen because human beings are human beings. And then one person, this was their original intention was this, and then they ended up feeling differently, or questions of using a surrogate, because sometimes it can be exploited against weak people financially who want to be paid for it, and all kinds of other things. The laws in Israel are pretty strict. It can only be used by a woman who's already had children, and only be done by a woman who's already had her own children and now wants to be a surrogate for someone else, and so on. But of course, people go out of Israel to do it. And it relates to our issues because of same-sex couples who want to have children, who then go and do that with a surrogate or all kinds of other things that are used today. For instance, there's another thing today called joint parenting, meaning a couple that's not married deciding together that they'll have a child, and the parenting will be joint. It's not a couple that was married, had children, got divorced, and then you have to work out some kind of arrangement between the parents, who has authority, and how much the child is at what parent. These are people who decide not to get married, but to have a child together, and which is it's not what I would want the first option to be, but sometimes I wouldn't totally reject it. There are women who are reaching the end of the age of their fertility, and they get married and they want to have a child, and they get a sperm donation and they have a child, and there's halachically nothing wrong with it. You can think what you want about whether you want this child to be born and grow up with a mother without a father, or you think that's terrible. I'm not getting into it. Halachically, there's no question about it. Certainly nothing questionable about it, as long as we know that the donation is coming from a kosher Jew and not someone who's forbidden to marry and mamzer and so on.
So if the husband, if the donor is a husband to somebody else, is that adultery?
No,
I was gonna.
Oh dear.
If what?
even no.
Are you
even
carrying
if
this
the
baby?
sperm is donated by another man and through artificial insemination, it's not considered any problem. No mamzerut.
Okay.
Eliezer?
Different question. How early can you convert the baby?
You can convert the baby when it's a baby.
As soon as it comes out of the
Yeah,
womb?
basically, yes. It has to be put in a mikveh. The child I'm talking about that I was involved in the case is a few years old. They took him for a swim. If it's a baby, you have to, put the baby in the mikveh. That there is halachically, you're allowed to convert babies, and halachically, when they reach the age of bar or bat mitzvah, they are, if if they don't want to be Jewish, at that point they can reject it and say I was never Jewish, and then they were never Jewish. But if they don't, then they're Jewish. And we've had that in the community with families who adopted children and converted them and celebrated their bar bat mitzvah in the community. And we just made sure that they're aware of that, and that the child at this point is, without making a fuss about it, without trying to push the child back to the wall, are you seriously Jewish or not? But just so that everybody should know that the child is growing up in a traditional Jewish home, doesn't want at that age to reject that, and they accept their Judaism, and then there's no question about their Judaism.
I have a question.
Yes.
At what point can you say that there's development of a child? At what point of the development of the sperm does it become something that is
Of the
you can
embryo,
s- Yeah.
40 days.
Pardon?
40 days.
40 days. Okay, thank you.
If a woman has a miscarriage before 40 days, there's a pregnancy is started, and after a week or two, something happens and there's a miscarriage. It's not considered any pregnancy. And for instance, the next child, if there would be when there would be another child,
It's gonna be a
if a
b'chol.
boy would be considered a bechol. If
A
it's more
bechol.
than 30 days, then the second child would not be considered a bechol. And I had a case like that once also, a woman who was afraid of what to do with Pidyon Ben, because her husband did not know that she had a miscarriage after 40 days some years before. So so it doesn't matter what the solution was, but I'm more worried about how good, how healthy her marriage is, the relationship is, if she's keeping a secret like that from her husband, more than I'm worried about the question of making a bracha for the Pidyon Ben if it wasn't necessary. But these kind of things happen in the world.
So in other words, until 40 days, it's not considered. I mean, you can have an abortion after 40 days.
It doesn't mean for no reason. It doesn't mean it's for no reason. It's permissible for no reason. But that's a stage where it becomes certainly much more serious. Yes.
So the baby, there's no baby yet. In other words, it's not something that's alive.
If there's no reason to abort, then and there's no leniency, there's no room for leniency. So I would say no, even not before 40 days. But if under special circumstances where I would think there's room to be lenient, do it before 40 days is certainly better than wait till after 40 days.
I'm upset, not upset. I'm concerned about when is it a live thing? When is it
that's what I'm saying. The
40 days.
The frozen impregnated egg is not. That's what they do with IVF. Sometimes a woman has eggs. What's the term in Hebrew? It's
Frozen.
Not frozen. Before freezing, they take out. It's called in Hebrew she'iva. They suck out the
eggs. Yeah. Okay.
And they're artificially
inseminate.
And then they freeze them. And for a woman who has difficulty becoming pregnant, like they'll implant one and see if it works. She tries once, it fails, she tries twice. She has a few because they have a few frozen. Those are not considered an embryo. And it's not, it is not abortion. That's what I said before. It's not considered abortion to destroy that. Let's say the couple gets divorced. And these are things that have been discussed in court and in Beit Din. The couple gets divorced. The woman wants to keep the frozen, fertilized eggs. Maybe one day she'll want to have a child. The husband says, I don't want you having children from my sperm. I don't want that. So he wants to destroy it. So halachically, it's not considered an abortion. There are reasons not to destroy it or do it kind of passively. Don't take care of it. Don't renew the electricity to the freezer where it is, and something's going to happen.
I understand. Okay.
But it's not the same as abortion.
Thank you. Okay.
Etta, you were going to say something before?
No, Michael said it.
Okay. What a
All right,
great,
well, then let me say something else.
yes.
We're talking about how some of these newer ideas, and it's interesting that this is really not what I would consider a progressive idea, but just a scientific advance that we're able to do these things today. But we're seeing some abuse of that system in what I would consider very rich narcissistic people. There are cases that I've heard about and read about where people will go through the IVF process and then use a surrogate simply to avoid the stresses on their own body of pregnancy, so they'll stay as they are.
Right.
How do we look at that?
Well, again, I don't think that's a, like you said, I don't think it's an issue of progressive or not. It's an issue of values, of what a person's values are, what life is about, what I should be doing, how I can use someone else. And for those kind of ideas, I would like to think that there is supervision, or there should be supervision, so that it is not misused. Like I mentioned before, one of the issues with surrogate mothers is that one of the fears is that rich people are going to, not in the sense that you said, but are going to take advantage of poor women who want to make money in this way and do it when it's not healthy, when it's dangerous for them, and things like that. Or organ donations, buy a kidney from a poor person, and is it done? Is that person checked properly to see that it's okay for them to donate? Are they taken care of properly medically? All these issues. So there has to be. I don't think these are not possibilities. I do think these are possibilities. It can be done in a way that brings good to the world. That is tikkun olam, because a woman who couldn't have children is now going to have a child from her egg and from her husband's sperm, but it will be another woman who's carrying the pregnancy. This can be a tikkun olam. This can be a great chesed, but it has to be supervised in a way that it is not exploited. It doesn't cause damage to other people along the way. So that's the same way I would look at this. Is a person just being spoiled and exploiting someone else? What's the story? And that's where I would put it into that kind of framework to check what's happening. I wouldn't want it to be used for that purpose, certainly not.
So does it make a difference if the woman is doing it because she enjoys being pregnant, or is she doing it because she's trying to? No, she doesn't have money. That's how she makes some money to live on. So
it's impossible, but I think, the legislators have to, whether halachic or general, have to look at all the balances and all the considerations and be aware of all the ways that people exploit these kind of things and take advantage of other people, and where are they in the world? Right. Third world countries or modern countries that are advanced in their technology and their medicine. All these things have to be taken into consideration. That's what I'm saying. I don't, I didn't sit on the committee that looked into all the issues, but it has to be, you do have to look into all of these issues. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the law in Israel is that it can like a surrogate pregnancy can only be done by a woman who has already had children of her own. And then she said, okay, I have had my children, and there's a woman who can't carry a pregnancy. I'm going to do it for her. And I wouldn't want a very young woman
right.
who has not had children to do this before. First she should be able to see that she can have her own children and not do that before she does that for someone else, and so on. So these are things, and every pregnancy has a certain element of danger in it. So these are all issues that, and maybe others that I haven't mentioned, that have to be taken into account and have to be supervised to make sure that it's being done properly.
Can I say something?
Yes, Phyllis.
Can I?
Hello.
It's Phyllis. Hi, how are you? Good evening. This is a very interesting topic for me and my family, of course. We've been there, done that. The thing there's going to be people taking advantage of every good thing that we have in the world. We have to look at the positive. I think it's more important. I know that I had some issue with the idea that there are companies that are desperate for Jewish women's eggs, and they want to give them to Jewish women who want children in the States. And it's big business. It's big business. There's a lot of care and supervision and going through all of the process. But the bottom line is that it's a big business. If a woman knows that she can donate eggs and get $10,000 at a time and come out every year, come out with over $60,000, it's a business. And it's first of all, I had an issue with whether, like, who's the mother? You know, who's the mother? You donated your eggs, it goes to some other mother. And I read such a nice, I read a very nice devar just about how much the embryo gives to the mother and the mother gives to the embryo, that the birth mother, even though she's not the egg mother, the birth mother is the mother.
We spoke about
I don't know
that.
if you said that.
Amongst poskim, we spoke about that a few minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed that part. But it's fascinating to realize that obviously we know that the embryo protects the mother that's raising it. It makes its environment healthier. It actually makes the mother healthier. So she becomes the mother. I think that's fascinating. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And
before it's halakhically it's a machloket. The more generally accepted view is that the mother who carries the pregnancy becomes the mother.
yeah,
But it's usually done in the world for the woman who can't carry the pregnancy. So that's interesting. But I'm not claiming there aren't advantages, but I think we have to be very, very careful because it can, like you say, there's a positive side.
it's a business.
But
Yeah, there's a financial side. There's
when it becomes a business, it can be misused and people can be hurt and can be exploited,
right.
taken advantage of. And so therefore, I think there have to be clear criteria and supervision.
Totally.
Okay. And what it does connect to our previous discussions is that this is the solution for as I said before, for same-sex couples. And now you ask yourself one of two things. You can say, oh my God, this is terrible. And now they have a way to have children, and that's why they're doing this, which didn't happen in the past. Or you can say, oh, that's beautiful. At least now they can have children, which they couldn't in the past. So it's also a question of which way you want to take it. And it goes back to the questions of, in general, that we did discuss before about same-sex couples. I want to move on and ask myself, what is it that bothers people about new progressive ideas? And I would say two things. First of all, there's fear that we're moving everything. It's like a building of cards. You're taking out one card, the whole thing is going to fall apart. So we're moving something, and Torah and all of our tradition and all of our values are going to be moved. And I think we have to look into this carefully. And if that's true, then we have to be very careful, and we have to oppose things that are going to do that. And on the other hand, not always. Sometimes we have our initial reaction to something identifies a certain change as change all across the board, and it's going to change everything and take apart the whole structure of our tradition. And that's not always true. Sometimes it can be changing one element and not inevitably changing the others. And I think it should be discussed openly and done in that way, that we have to check. And if it can be done in a way that's making one change, then that's a discussion in and of itself. Is it positive or negative? But if it's positive, or if it has a positive side, if it enables things that weren't done in the past that have an element of chesed in them, then we have to check. And can we move one thing without having everything move? That's another different way of looking at it. Another thing I think that happens is that people assume that if I believe in something, then something that seems to contradict my belief is impossible. I'll be very explicit about what I'm talking about. One of the things that is one of the greatest difficulties for people who feel that their sexual desire, sexual inclination is same sex, is that, and they grow up believing in Torah, is the question of that I believe in the Torah that tells me this is forbidden, and I experience that this is the way Hashem created me. And then the question is to Hashem, how could you do this to me? How is it possible? For them, it's a very, very difficult challenge. I'm fascinated to see that I'm not, I mean, it's interesting, it's fascinating, it's intriguing, it's challenging that there are people who grow up religious. And by the way, they try for years not to be there, but end up understanding and accepting that that's where they are. And they try, and a lot of people in the world will say there's no such thing as a religious gay man or a religious lesbian woman, because you can't be. It's like a religious person who's mechalel Shabbat. That's the comparison. And their claim is, and I'm trying to be impartial, their claim is that this is kind of, I have no other choice. This is kind of honest. I have no, this is what I am. I can't change it. And a lot of negative experiences from trying to change it. All the, what is it called? Transformation, the tipulei hamara, the, what's the term in English? The conversion therapy. That left a lot of people with a lot
The
of
trans kids.
Conversion therapy.
with a lot
Conversion therapy, yeah.
That left a lot of people with a lot of difficulties and a lot of anger at the end of the process. But in any case, for them, it's a difficult question. But then there are people, and it's much more difficult for them than for any one of us looking at it from the outside. But also there are people who say it's impossible. It can't be that there really are, but because of the same question, people looking from the outside are saying, well, since I believe in the Torah, then it's impossible that Hashem put someone in this situation. So it's impossible that it really exists. And if you say you're gay, I am sure you're not really gay. And I think it's important to understand that sometimes we live with questions and we don't have the answers to all the questions, and we don't know for sure. It's a question. I agree. It's a question. The question is right there in front of me, and the question challenges me. But the fact that the question challenges me does not mean that the absolute and only possible answer is the answer that therefore you're not truly what you claim to be, gay or lesbian or whatever it is. And I don't have an answer to the question, and I'm not sure what the answer is.
Excuse me.
Answer. But I believe that we can live with questions, and maybe over time we will go through some kind of process that will enable us to find an answer. For now, I'd rather say I know, than to say I know for sure this is the situation. And okay, so I said that, and I'd like to discuss a couple of other things. But if anyone wants to relate to that, please take your turn. Etta,
Many years ago, when I was in Fort Worth a lot, I used to speak at Texas Christian University, and so and talk about Judaism. And so one of the kids that was Jewish there came to the counseling session service, and they asked me to speak to him because I was a social worker, and because he was coming out as being gay. He didn't tell anybody, but his parents accidentally found his diary or something and found out he was gay, and he was just suffering from it and everything. And so when I tried to talk to him and everything, one of the things I kept looking at, I mean, I had some Kollel rabbis in Dallas telling me, but the Torah says this and this and this and this. And I went, I know, but there's also rules how I'm supposed to treat people. So what's the rule? How I treat that person? And, so I told the young man, I said, I mean, a lot of other things too, but, everyone says that's religious. God doesn't make mistakes. So if God doesn't make a mistake, then you can't be a mistake. And the other thing is that, when someone dies, we say, Baruch Dayan Haemet. That's not just for someone dying. I'm not a judge. No one died and left me in charge. So I have to be who I have to do what God asked me to do, to love my fellow Jew, to be a good person, to be a good example, and how that person has to live their life and how they have to deal with their suffering like everybody else does or whatever, or happiness. That's what they have to do. And I just have to let that, I am not a judge. I'm not a judge for them. I mean, on parts, I have seen people, I used to babysit for a kid. I knew immediately when the kid was 2 years old or 3 years old, the kid was gay. I knew it. You could tell, and he's gay. But there are other people I have seen that, like women mainly, that have been so hurt by men that they have chosen to be with women. So I've seen both sides, but I'm not the judge. No one left me in charge. I just have to be the best Jewish person I can be, and I'm not perfect. And you had mentioned, like, being not observing Shabbat or something. There actually is I know a rabbi that came out as being gay and everything, and I think he was big in Yerushalayim about making a center for Jewish gay people. He said that there are people, I mean, there are religious Jews that are unethical in business. They do other things that are wrong. So what is different that we're both doing something that we have to struggle?
I would say two things about what you said. I'll start with the latter and then go back to the first one. I think there, like you say, you can see sometimes a person who's, you say you saw it when he was 2 or 3 years old. So I do think that there are people that this is who they are, and it's something that I know of people have worked very hard for 10 years when they were adults and tried to get out of it and not live that way. And a man who tried to go out with women and so on, very religious people, and they didn't want it because of religion, and they just couldn't. So I do think there are people that this is where they're at. There's nothing that can change that. And I agree with you that there are also other reasons that put people in those situations. And I think if the world was open in all directions, then we could treat this properly and try and get people, to look into it and to make free decisions through looking into, what the real issues are. One can reach this decision, another could reach that decision, but we have to let them go through their processes. And I would encourage all of us to, from all directions, not to be automatic about these things. And the other issue is, and you mentioned it, I'm just trying to say it in a way that I present it to others sometimes, is that there are 2 mitzvot in the Torah. I mean, there are 613. Right now I'm going to talk about 2 of them. One of them is the prohibitions of sexual conduct, and the other is ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So never forget either of them. So I can't say to someone, I'm erasing this pasuk from the Torah, and I also can't say I'm erasing that pasuk from the Torah. And ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, amongst other things, means how would I want other people to treat me if I was in his situation? And if I was and I'm not in his situation, and I can't understand, I can't fully feel, I can try and I can be empathetic, but I can't totally feel his situation. I certainly wouldn't want people putting me down, calling me names, telling me that I'm an evil person and so on. What should we do? What am I going to guide him to do? All these questions are greater questions, but certainly not to put the person down or call him names and things like that. Even if I think that it's what he's doing is wrong, he might be in a halachic category of honest, that he doesn't have any choice. And even if, or maybe there's another halachic or Torah term that can be that can be addressed to this issue. But even if it is in some way something that he's doing wrong and he shouldn't be doing, it's still a reason to. It may be a reason to discuss with him, try to convince him. If you think that there is what to convince him, if there's nothing you can do about it, there's not much to convince him. But if you think there's something to convince him, it's not a reason to go out, like you say, judging, calling names, putting a person down. And believe me, or don't believe me, believe them, that their lives as religious people who discover this inclination within themselves and try to fight it and end up coming to terms with it, their lives are already have a burden on them, and I don't think our mitzvah is to make their burden greater.
Can I say something? Oh,
And then Phyllis, okay?
yeah. Yeah, okay. I've been teaching high school for over 20 years, and I've had many gay students. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Eliezer wants to talk?
That's okay. Like to hear what you
I have 2 main approaches when I talk to kids that are coming out to me, at least. The first thing is I say, like I totally believe them. I totally believe them that their feelings are real and genuine. I also tell them that doesn't mean you're not going to be religious anymore. I think that you need to be stronger in other mitzvot, and you can be discreet about your inclination. It doesn't have to be in everyone's face. It's like the kid that takes his kippah off. When you go to the family with the bar mitzvah, put your kippah on. It's not about being a hypocrite. It's about being respectful. And there's nothing wrong with teaching kids to learn to be discreet and respectful. And I've had boys come to me and say, like, Phyllis, only because of you, I still put tefillin on, right? And he puts tefillin on, and he's gay, and he lives a gay lifestyle, and he's doing what he does, but he feels he's still connected. He's still doing, because I told him he has to pick something and be strong in that, you know? My other way of explaining it to them is that I believe that every soul is a soul that's been through a tikkun. All of the neshamot in our bodies and in our bodies now are old souls. They've all been through tikkunim, and the only thing that have come back are the things that still need to go through a tikkun. And sometimes a woman's soul lands in a man's body, and a man's soul lands in a woman's body. And this gives them these inclinations. And that's what maybe New Age people call your feminine side and your masculine side. It's there, it's real. And whatever we want to strengthen, we can. And I just tell them that I love them, I'm here for them, but be strong in your Judaism. Don't throw everything away just because this is something you can't control, or you feel it's bigger than you are, you know? That's all I can say. I just feel I try to give comfort and support, but also stay Jewish. Stay Jewish.
I think that's very important. I would just, as much as I agree with what you're saying, I would like to push a little bit or to express my understanding of what I've learned from talking to people in these situations, without saying what is right at the end, what's the end goal. But I want to explain what I've heard from them, like about the idea of being gay or pride, you know, the term pride in Israel, the gav. Right? People are very negative towards the idea of pride, because Judaism is about modesty, not about gav. We don't make a pride parade about, you know, each just objective things, not objective, but things that are not controversial.
I keep Shabbos, I go to shul, I want a parade.
Everyone wants to pride parade everybody what they're proud about. But I think we're misunderstanding what they mean by the term pride. I think what they're saying is, and this relates to what you were saying, Phyllis, they were saying, I'm discussing what you meant about what you said about being discreet. There's a difference between pushing in someone's face, making an agenda, making a fight against the community and things like that. And what they mean is they want not to have to be embarrassed about who they are. They don't want to have to hide. There's a difference between pushing it on someone, saying to themselves, I have to keep it in. And that's, I just want us to think about that question without reaching a resolution now. Let's not run too far from where we are now or too far ahead. We might lose ourselves in the process, but just as food for thought for everyone to give thought to that. Mm-hmm. Elias, we're going to say something.
Yeah, not much. First of all, I think the most terrible thing in the world would be for rabbis to be robots, and that the bottom line is that in a situation like this, you have to talk to human beings, not necessarily a rabbi, maybe a teacher, somebody. But also, I do feel that despite the fact that we have to accept the challenges in life, and being gay might be a very strong challenge, that one has to not accept it as a completely valid thing, that this is a serious problem, and that you know, somebody might be a kleptomaniac and somebody else might be very attracted to a married woman, or, you know, married person of the opposite sex, And these are things that one has to deal with. I don't know what the solution is, but I think there is some comparison with challenging situations.
I will say, Eliezer, there's a difference between someone who's attracted to a married person of the opposite sex and between a kleptomaniac, okay?
Very
Because
different.
who's attracted to a person, nobody's born with a sexual inclination towards a certain individual.
Yeah.
So I think that's, okay, that's just something we can say to you, overcome, because there is another avenue. You can't marry this woman. Sorry, she's married. You can look for another woman to marry. What do you say to a kleptomaniac? You know, so what? So, you know, this is something, I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know. And I think it's a less difficult situation than same-sex attraction, but I'm not sure what to say to them. I think it's a very serious question. I think if I look at Rav Yoni Rosenzweig, who has gotten into, in the last couple of years, into issues of mental health challenges in halachic surroundings, in halachic circumstances, dealing with that extensively. I'm sure someone has dealt with this. I'm not sure who and how, but I think it's a very serious issue to deal with, but it's different. And gay and lesbian is closer to the kleptomaniac because of the question of, okay, so what is your solution? And it's one thing to say, and I think it's the right thing to say, I accept that there is such a reality. I agree with what Etta said before. It's not everyone who says I am that necessarily is, but there are people who this is their reality, and we have to be aware of that. We also have to be aware that wherever we open or close, we're going to hurt someone, because if you open too freely, everybody's going to, a lot of people are going to jump in, and it's not necessary. And if you don't open enough, some people are going to be, their life is going to be so stressful, they're going to commit suicide. We don't want that to happen, or they're going to live with terrible stress all their lives and they'll suffer, and we don't want that to happen. So we're looking for the right combination and the right balance, but it's very, very difficult. But it's one thing for us to come to the realization, to the recognition that this is a real phenomena, and to say, but I don't have a solution. It's another thing to be that person who is being told, I don't have a solution for you. And I love you, I care about you, I wish I had a solution, I'd love to support you. Please don't disconnect, come talk to me, I'll try to, let's look, what can we do? There are all kinds of questions involved. But if it's me, would I accept being told, but I don't have a solution for you? If it's your child, each and every one of us, what would you say to our child? What would we want for our child? I'm just saying I don't know the answers. It's a real question to my mind. We recognize that there is such a reality, and what are our answers? What are our solutions? I think that's a serious question that we have to confront, and we have to deal with in the next decade very carefully.
One thing that I do stress to the kids is that this inclination does not have to define them completely. This is not what defines who they are. They can still be artists and teachers and philosophers and psychologists and doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs. Their sexual inclination does not have to define their entire life.
But it's a part of their life that they need solution for. They can't live a complete life with this unsolved, and so this is a challenge. Certainly they can, I agree with you, I would encourage them to continue growing in many different ways, but this is not, if I'm not perfect about everything, I can move on. I'm not going to be perfect. There are things that are not in my life. But yeah, 1 second, Michael. But I think you're right, Phyllis, but still it's not going to make this is a main issue in everyone's life, sexuality and finding their place in that. And I agree with you, there can be a lot of great things. They can be great people, and we can learn a lot from them in other places. And I don't have the solution, but I don't know what to answer to that lack of solution, and that's something we have to face. Michael.
So a couple of things. if we're going to agree, which I do agree, that there are people born with this built-in tendency, okay? That may have real similarities with other, call it a medical condition. There are plenty of people that find out that they have a diagnosis, that there's no cure for that. Diabetes may be one of those things. Sometimes cancer, sometimes other things. There are issues that people just have to accept and learn to live with. There's not necessarily going to be a solution, but there are ways to mitigate the problem. So I fully agree with that people want to be able to live with respect and not be persecuted because of, who they are, how they were born. As Jews, I think we all feel that way. Because anti-Semitism is a real thing today. Where I have a real problem are the folks that take the concept of gay pride and turn it into something that is so disrespectful to society that you start to see disruption in the society. We all want a society that we can all live in. And for an example, one of the problems we're seeing certainly in the United States, I don't know about if it's a big deal yet in Israel, although in Tel Aviv, maybe it is. There's a big outpouring of cross-dressing. They have story time in libraries by people that are pretending to be women and
Like drag queens.
drag queen.
Michael, I think you're taking us to another issue that we want to discuss separately, the dysphoria issue and that kind of thing, gender.
No, these people are not gender dysphoric. They like to dress up and pretend that they're the other sex. They're not necessarily saying they are the other sex.
Okay, but I think it's
in that
from the gay and lesbian issue.
So are they transvestites?
Yes. Now, some of them may be gay, but what I'm saying is that
Close up one discussion and then open the next one, okay?
Oh, okay, deal.
If anyone wants to comment about the previous discussion that we were discussing, that we have not solved, but I'm saying it's something that faces us, we have to confront it.
Okay, so one more thing about this discussion.
Yes.
With the gay people and the gay pride parades are anything but respectful demonstrations that we are people and deserve respect. The ones that I've seen have been almost like hedonism in public.
In Tel Aviv, you're right.
Yeah.
And some other places in the world. In Jerusalem, I'm not sure you're right. And I'm not sure if I'm, and then you're going to have the argument, okay, that's the worst in the world is that they're doing it in Jerusalem, or Jerusalem is the place that's looking to do it in a more subtle way. And maybe there's something to encourage in that, but
yeah, well, call it a vote if they can keep a lid on it.
If it's a hedonism, I totally agree with you. That's something else. That's the totally different. They're pushing in a totally different direction. If it's a parade that's saying, respect us and accept us for who we are, and we're not putting sexuality out in the open and so on. Doesn't matter. Gay, lesbian, heterosexual. I don't want it out in the open. I think we can all agree on that without, and put that aside. But still confronted with the main issue, and I don't want to say, Michael, are we going to the gay parade in Jerusalem next year? But I'm saying there might be something to look into in that in Jerusalem might be different than Tel Aviv and all the other cities in the world in that respect.
Yeah.
Tina.
Yes. My younger brother was gay, and I remember him as a young boy, afraid to do any sports or do anything that was contact sports, was afraid of getting hurt. As a young teenager, he would go into my closet and take out my skirts and put them on. It was, something that I grew up with. And years later, when we moved from Ecuador to the United States, he suffered greatly when he went to high school in Virginia. And he was bullied, he was ostracized, he suffered greatly. And it was only as an adult many years later that he found a partner, and they were together for 18 years until he died. So I was looking into things, I would read things up, and I found something about a different chromosomal makeup for somebody who was homosexual. Michael, did you want to say anything about that?
I don't know about that.
Okay, but that's what I read about. Yeah, that they did find that there was a different, I don't know what the setup is in terms of the XY or double X or whatever it is. But it was definitely something that I saw in him from a very young age.
About the science, I don't know, and I don't know that there is, I don't know that there's any such thing as the term objective. It's more like a Platonic notion that there is something called objectivity, theoretically. I don't know about a person, a human being who's objective, and I don't know about scientists who are objective. I'm saying this in both directions. How much is science scientific, and how much is science trying to serve a certain agenda in both directions? So I don't know about this scientific thing that you're telling us about, how factual is it or not. I haven't heard of it either.
Oh, really?
Of research that is pushing in this direction or in that direction. And I would love to have a group of scientists who would say, okay, we're going to look into this clean of any agenda. We don't have a goal that we want to reach. We want to look into the scientific facts and come up with whatever science really tells us. That would be very interesting.
I'll throw out one scenario that immediately comes to my mind. If, for example, someone does identify a gene that will cause the development of that person as a homosexual, and you can identify that gene, let's say with in vitro fertilization, would we want to have that gene removed?
Oh.
Great question. And if you're comparing it to, as you said before, to a disease, then we would want to cure the disease. And if we consider it just a different form of humanity, then we would not want to cure that other form of humanity. So that's going to be a major question if we ever reach that point.
It's this just, I'm sorry, and just on a very strange level, this reminds me when my son, when he started losing his hearing, then there was a whole discussion about the cochlear implant, which was a very new thing back in those days. And they said, you have no right to do surgery on your child just because he's deaf. Deaf is a way of being. Deaf people are deaf people. Who cares? So what if he can't hear? It's not your place to do a major surgery to try to fix that. That's who he is. And we were getting all these arguments about that there was a deaf society and deaf people have a right to be deaf. And I said, but we have a way of fixing it. Why do they have to be deaf? So yeah, what he's saying about trying to fix a chromosomal change or to rewrite somebody's life by fixing it, it's a huge question. It's like, why would we want to change that person? They might be perfectly good the way they are.
I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you should.
And I'm saying
it's
question of what is the criteria? How can we try to be clear and then draw the lines about where we interfere, because we are doing, but interfering is chesed, and when we not interfere because we are deciding what someone's life should be like. I mean, it's a serious question, and I totally, of course you should give him hearing. I mean, it seems so clear, so obvious. I know it's hard for me. I'm trying to even grasp the argument.
There's an entire society, maybe it's not as active as it was 25, 30, almost 45 years ago. But in those days, if your kid was born deaf or or became deaf, it was acceptable to just let him blend into the deaf world. We took 2 visits to the deaf world with kids not being able to talk clearly. And, we knew that was not going to be our world.
Right.
We were just going to turn over every stone and make him hear and make him better and love him the way he is, but,
And
fix what we can.
I would say we're not gonna have to, I'm sorry, Michael, we're not gonna get, I'm not trying to run away. We'll do it next time. We'll start with that. But the dysphoria and the trance and all that, we have to discuss that. But I would say about that and about everything, one major thing that I would like to conclude with, but before Eliezer wanted to add something.
Yeah, there's something I forgot to say. When you talk about the personal quality of it, you might say, okay, if a homosexual has to find a like partner, that's one thing. But there are also instances of people who feel that they have to seduce every person of the same sex, especially people in a position of authority. And I find that reprehensible.
Of course.
That's abuse. That's just abuse. That's just,
Well, they say, well, I can't help it. I'm attracted to, people, and
But there are boundaries in no matter what the issues are. But I would like to say the following: in the world, there's a lot of in everything. There's a lot of fighting and cancel culture that you mentioned in the last time we spoke, Michael. And there's cancel culture about everything. There's cancel culture about right and left wing, about Republican and Democratic in America, or right and left, or religious and non-religious in Israel, and it's all ridiculous and very negative. And the same is true about these issues going both ways. And I'm going to be very, very haughty now, and I'm going to claim, not about myself individually, but about the Orthodox, what's the word I'm looking for? The Orthodox, again, I'm forgetting this word.
mainstream, middle of the road, mainstream.
You're looking for the right thing, but I don't like the term, sorry, the term middle of the road. It's the matun. The word in Hebrew is matun. Is, what's the English for matun?
moderate.
Yes.
Moderate.
Moderate, yes,
We can't say conservative. We'll have to say
No.
moderate.
moderate. Go ahead.
With a big C, a capital C, or without a capital C. But no, I'm going to moderate, halachically committed, belief in Torah min hashamayim, but listening, attentive. And I think that around us, there are people, there's a culture that's saying everything is accepted, it doesn't matter what. And therefore, there is no questioning of anything and not looking for boundaries and not looking for balances. And on the other hand, there is a community, a culture that's saying Torah, and I don't want to hear anything from anybody who has anything else to say or who has a new question in the world. It's all nonsense. It's all, Torah is very clear and negative about it. End of discussion. And on both sides, there isn't any opportunity to be attentive and question and look into research, research in your own thinking and in rabbinical thinking, that maybe there is something that we can discover that wasn't always, it wasn't, maybe we can think of solutions that we haven't thought of until now. And I think Dafka community that's committed and believing in the Torah on the one hand and attentive and moderate on the other hand has a tool that maybe can give us something. I don't have the solutions, but maybe can give us, maybe we have a tool that others are not even willing to consider, that maybe we can in the long run find something that hasn't been found by others. Dafka, because we're not rejecting totally rejecting either of the extremes, maybe we have an opportunity to give something, to give a gift to the world that can help us make a better world. I don't have the road paved in front of me, to say just here it is, everybody walk in this way, but maybe we have the opportunity to look for it and maybe find it somewhere down the road. I would hope.
Ezrat Hashem.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we had the Gemara discusses some people who are deaf, who are they talk about the tomb, they talk about some other difficulties with people, but I don't know, you probably, more than I do, but I don't recall from whatever I have learned so far in Gemara, I don't remember anybody talking about that. I mean, I don't remember anybody discussing this in the Gemara. Do you?
Yes, absolutely. What,
Okay,
discussing what?
homosexuality.
No, you're right. That's not discussed. It was just
Just
non-existent and therefore wrong, and
exactly.
just and that is a certain basis. If we do find a way to accept that there are some things that are wrong if you take them out of choice, but if you don't have any other choice, then maybe there's
Right.
a way to make space for it. That's a question that I don't have the answer to right now. But you're right, it's not discussed in the Gemara as far as I know.
Yeah.
Only in the way.
I don't remember anything. Right. Okay.
Even on a practical level, as a Rav in a community in our shul years ago, a very prominent family's son was being married to another man. And the Rav had a big decision whether to say Mazel Tov in shul. Like, does he get an ufruf? Does he get called up to the Torah? Do we say Mazel Tov to someone who's marrying same sex?
Can the rabbi marry?
Well, it was a very big question. I think that he got out of it by not saying Mazel Tov to the boy, but Mazel Tov to the parents, that his son has found happiness, and they should all be live and be well. But it was an obvious kind of like, don't put me in this position. There's no clear answer. I don't know if you would wish Mazel Tov to someone who is having a gay marriage in your shul.
It may depend on how big the kiddush is they're going to sponsor.
Forget the kiddush. What are they donating to the building fund?
That's a better question. Okay, it's interesting. Okay.
We know where we're starting in 2 weeks. We're starting from this gender dysphoria and trans and all that. That's where we're starting from in 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you
That's
very much.
Thanks
Good
a lot.
night.
Good night, everyone. Where's
Good
Tina
discussion.
go?